Breath in and exhale. Deep breath in and exhale. And one more. Deep breath in and exhale. All right. I don't know about you, but I feel so calm after that. Isaiah looked like he's calm. All right. So I'm going to share my screen. You guys should have the same thing on your, oh wait, let me stop. You should just have this playing in the background. I feel like. All right, so I'm going to present. You guys should see the Padlet. All right, so for the do now, I thought it'd be really cool, since sometimes you guys don't like talking or unmuting yourself, to be able to share your thoughts in this manner where you can just write. So in response to some other figures we learned about last week, Arturo Schomburg, Mary Church Terrell, Carter G. Woodson, we talked a little bit about Ida B. Wells a few weeks ago. I want you guys to tell me, which educational advocate do you feel did the most to advance Black history? Why? And so after you comment, you're going to respond to a classmate, okay? So after you comment, you're going to respond to a classmate. So I am going to put the URL in the chat box again, just in case there were some people that did not get it. And I want you guys to click on the link and respond. It is hard to pick one. I got a lot of responses from my first period, so I'm really curious to see who's going to win this round. Miss Williams, it was like neck and neck. I'm not going to say who because I don't want to influence them, but it was like neck and neck. And I was surprised at who was neck and neck with. Yes, you can type in the box below the person and press the arrow. And I think you can respond. I enabled it, but I'm still trying to figure this all out. Okay, Liddy, can you tell me why?
How do we respond?
Are you able to click on the person and it a reply thingy?
Oh, I ain't see
Someone has to comment first. Like, there's only one comment. We only have Liddy. So we need more comments. So you guys pick one of the people and comment on why you picked them. And then let's see if a reply button pops up. I enabled it, but we'll see. Oh, thank you, Liddy. Okay, good. So Liddy says she was a lynching advocate. And for those of you that are here, also, I'm going to put the consent form in the box because this class is recorded. So if you haven't filled that out, you need to. All right, we're getting some comments rolling in now. Nice. Let's see. Okay.
How do we respond?
You don't even necessarily have to comment under the person. You can make your own post. Like Rose has her own post. So you guys can like go comment under her post too.
Where is Rose's post?
Rose's post is at the top. You might have to refresh for it to pop up.
Oh.
You see it? Isn't this kind of cool?
I do see it, but why did it pushed, like it looks different now?
Yeah, it put Arturo down to the bottom. So it's like a news feed a little bit.
Is it? Oh, wow. There's a lot of people under Carter G. Woodson. So why is Roses over there and not under Carter
She
G.
made her own, which there's a little plus sign where you can literally make your own post, which is cool. That's totally fine.
Okay.
It makes it more, it makes it a little bit more interactive.
Okay. So, all right.
So we got one more for Carter. Well, he's like, sheesh. He's running away with it. Nobody for Arturo?
Well, you said we can only pick one.
Oh, that's true. All right, let's see where CC commented. I saw Siani. Who's anonymous? He made a whole month. I think he contributed the most as he advocated for the study of Black history. Okay. It looks like everybody's going with Carter. Okay, well, we have, oh yeah, we only have one for Ida. And everybody else is Carter G. Woodson. Dustin just left a comment. Let's see where he left his comment. Can we do it too? Did you do it, Ms. Williams?
I did. I was the first one under Carter G. Woodson.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm gonna do one. I'm a comment then. Okay.
Yeah, Dustin. I love me some Ida B. Wells.
Yes.
I only pick one.
I know.
Oh, good. Good, Rose. See, it's hard. They all segue into each other anyway.
Ah! But Arturo did as well. Somebody said he dedicated his whole life to learn about African American history. I mean, Arturo did as well. And he also made it cool to be Afro-Latino. And like proud to be Black. I'm just saying. So you got an Afro-Latino down here in Schaumburg who is one of the fathers of Black history. And you can go to his library in New York and learn all the things. Look at me trying to persuade people. Fine, I'll be the only one for Arturo. Antonio, hey Antonio. Antonio put the okay. All right.
So is this all this Padlet does? It's like
yeah, you can, the kids can go back and forth. So we could do something where like it's just literally a question and then the kids put their answers and then they respond to other kids. It can be videos. You can have a video, they listen to the video and then they respond. There's like all types of things you can do with it. I just thought it was really cool. Do you guys like it? All right, we're gonna head back to the.
All right, thanks.
Oh, I have to stop presenting. That would be helpful. Okay. So let us know if you like that in the chat box. If you don't like it, we won't do it again. But if you liked it, it's just a different way to do nails. Switch it up. Be different. All right. So do you want to present, Miss Williams, or?
Sure. Let me
Okay.
see how to do this again.
Oh, James said, well, James, you totally could have unmuted yourself. You could have unmuted yourself. That's totally fine. You can like write it and be like, my name is James. This is what I got to say. I'm going with my homeboy from around the way. Listen, because he don't play.
Oh my gosh. Bars.
I'm I'm here.
Where is my present? Aha, present.
That was bars, Miss Ridgeway.
Would you say, Zay?
I said that was bars.
Period.
Am I there? Can you hear me too?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Do I control it from the tab, or do I must have to go. Hold on.
Oh, Rose says she wants you to rap, Miss Williams. She wants you to rap the today.
Oh my gosh. See what you be doing?
You say you want me to rap?
No.
Want to rap?
You say you want me to rap?
I'm here to rap.
I'm going to rap in my place. Thanks.
Oh, Miranda, it's so good to see you. It's okay, no worries. Oh, I'm gonna take roll 2 while we're at it.
Miss,
Okay.
you say you want me to rap?
Oh my gosh. Amir, can you rap at the end of class?
That's Zay now.
Oh,
Not
yeah.
even Zay.
Okay.
Yeah, you can rap at the end of class, Isaiah.
It's not Isaiah.
Who is it now?
That's Muhammad.
Okay, Muhammad, you can rap at the end of class. Right now, Ms. Williams is about to jump in here.
Okay. So, for my students, I put our essential questions on Google Classroom already. Today, we're going to be discussing the leadership of Black intellectual thinkers during the early 20th century. We're going to be looking at 3 different thinkers today, 3 of the most prominent intellectual leaders, activists, philosophers, if you will. Yeah, from the early 20th century. We're going to go a little bit out of order, in that we're going to start with Marcus Garvey. And at the end, in addition to responding to the essential questions that I put on Google Classroom, we're also going to participate in a brief debate on which intellectual's agenda best addressed the Negro problem, quote unquote Negro problem. The Negro problem was really white supremacy. That was the Negro problem. But
if you like to argue, stick around. No, I was saying, so if you like to argue, stick around.
Yeah, I mean, it's 1:25 now. I don't know if we're going to get to this debate today.
I know.
But for now, take notes.
Yes.
All right. So the first intellectual thinker, leader, activist that we're going to talk about and learn about is Marcus Garvey. Let me know if you've heard of Marcus Garvey, what you do know about Marcus Garvey. Take a second to respond to any of those hands in the box, or Ms. Ridgeway, you can yell it out.
I'm on it.
Something. Okay. What do we know about Marcus Garvey?
Let's see. Do you guys know anything about Marcus? Nope. Never heard of him. So Miranda says, nope, never heard of him. Rose said, nope, his name is familiar, but I don't know anything. That's Priscilla. Marcus Garvey. Antonio says his name is Marcus. Indeed. Let's see, anybody else? I guess that's it.
Okay. Well, take notes, guys. When you think of Marcus Garvey, you can think of the UNIA, you can think of Pan-Africanism, you can think of Black nationalism. That's who Marcus Garvey is. All right. So Marcus Garvey was born in St. Ann's Bay, Jamaica in 1887. At the age of 14, he quit school, became a printer's apprentice. He traveled to Central America and South America. He traveled throughout, and what he saw, what he witnessed throughout Central and South America.
Oh, Miss Wesley.
Yes.
Can you press the present button?
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks, Siani.
Uh-oh, my bad. Is it?
Sorry. Oh, so just press the space bar and it'll bring up all of the, yeah.
Oh, fancy. Okay. So, all right. So, yeah, he's born in Jamaica, 1887, St. Ann's Bay. Quit school at 14, became a printer's apprentice, where he learned about, well, printing and newspapers. He traveled throughout Central and South America. He returned to Jamaica in 1914, and what he saw throughout Central and South America among his travels were just terrible exploitation of Black workers everywhere he went. He witnessed that, and the same in Jamaica. And so when he came back to Jamaica, he founded the UNIA, the Universal Negro Improvement Association. And this is in 1914. The UNIA, this is the largest Black mass movement in American history. It included a printing press, because that's what he learned as a printer's apprentice. The goal of the UNIA was to encourage Africans from around the world to return to Africa and build a new nation there. And the slogan was "Back to Africa." And this idea is what is the idea of Black nationalism. This returning to Africa, if you will, repatriating Africa and starting our own colony led by African Americans. It would be in Liberia. But what you should know about Black nationalism and Marcus Garvey is that he's not the first Black nationalist on the scene. As a matter of fact, there was a man by the name of Martin Delany. Martin Delany was from the 19th century, and he would debate with Frederick Douglass on which way Black people should, what aspects of liberation Black people should pursue. I'll say that. And Martin Delany is one of the first and earliest Black nationalists who said that Black people need to go back to Africa. Frederick Douglass said, no, we built this country and we need to stay. And so this debate has been amongst our leadership since the time of slavery. Any questions? I heard it. Nothing?
Yeah, let me look in there. I was just going to say too that the Philadelphia UNIA chapter was really integral to the Great Migration movement here in Philadelphia. So just an FYI. Someone says, oh, James says, wasn't Liberia also supported by racist whites in order to get rid of Black people in America? Yeah.
Yeah. And not all of the whites who supported it were racist either. Some of them just supported us and what we wanted to do. So Marcus Garvey, he moved to the United States in 1916. It was Booker T. Washington who invited him to America, and he admired Booker T. Washington because Booker T. Washington had a message of self-reliance. So we'll get to that idea of Booker T. Washington and self-reliance in a minute. But he moved to the United States in 1916. He toured and lectured on racial pride, unity, again, self-reliance. He settled in Harlem because Harlem was, you can think of like the Black capital of America, if you will, during this time period. He settled and he organized a chapter of the UNIA in Harlem. And by 1919, they had over 2 million members and over 30 chapters worldwide. As Ms. Ridgway just mentioned, there was a chapter here in Philadelphia, but we're talking about worldwide. And that whole worldwide comes under this idea of Pan-Africanism, which we'll talk about in a minute too. UNIA, Pan-Africanism and self-reliance, what Garvey wanted to do as a Black nationalist is for us to create our own. So he founded a printing press, a newspaper. He had a newspaper called the Negro World, a publishing house, a shipping line, which was called the Black Star Line, grocery stores, Black restaurants. And again, the UNIA was the largest organized mass movement of African Americans in the United States history at this time period. And so he is huge.
So Rose said, so his philosophy was that all of the African diaspora should be united against racism.
And yes, and discrimination and oppression, and that we should have our own self-determination, self-reliance. That is his philosophy. And so he appealed to those who saw no future for themselves in mainstream American life. With everything that was going on during this time period, we're still talking about Jim Crow. You know, Jim Crow lasted up into the 1960s. Lynching, which took place daily up into the 1960s, or multiple times a week into the 1960s. So all of this is going on. And so he appealed to those who saw no future for themselves in mainstream American life. As a Pan-Africanist, he believed in the fundamental unity of Black people throughout the world. And at this time, there were 400 million people of African descent throughout the world. As a Pan-Africanist, he believed that all Blacks who are descendants of Africa, from Brazil to Brooklyn, from Harlem to Haiti, that we're all one people and that we need to unite for the betterment of ourselves. So Garvey, he emerged at a time when Blacks were returning from World War I, determined to fight to get their rights. He appealed to our sense of Black pride in a moment in history where white supremacy is supreme. And so he created the Unia again, which is the largest Black mass movement in American history.
We have some questions.
Okay.
So King says, I was just about to respond, but King says, are these Black stores and restaurants only for Blacks?
That's a great question, which I don't have the answer to. I can't imagine that it would be, as in, money is money.
Money is money.
Money is money. I can't imagine that it would
be on creating jobs within the Black community. So in that respect, the jobs, I would imagine, were reserved for Black people in the community, but I can't imagine them turning people away.
No, I can't imagine that. Money is money. So,
yeah. And then we have another question. Was there ever a movement for the Black Belt to secede or become autonomous?
The Black Belt? Like,
are you guys trying to say like Black people in the South? Luca? For clarity?
There was a movement for Black people to create a nation within the United States. That nation would be in the South.
Yeah.
In terms of Black nationalism. If that's what you're referring to as the Black Belt in the South, there was a movement for Blacks to create their own nation in the South. If that's what you're referring to. But the Negro World newspaper was widely circulated, had over 100,000, sold over 100,000 copies a month. Again, his message was Black pride, that Black people are worthwhile people, that we've been kings and queens in Africa, and he wanted us to repatriate to Africa and establish a colony under African-American leadership in Liberia. And he created that shipping line, the Black Star Line, to transport those who wanted to move back to Africa, and sold many tickets to go back to Africa. But unfortunately, the ships were not well built, and he was selling shares for a ship that he didn't own. And so the FBI used that information to arrest him for mail fraud, and he was tried and convicted, and he was deported in 1922. So that's who Marcus Garvey is or was. He ended up he was deported back to Jamaica. He ended up moving to England, where he died. And that's one of his most famous quotes: "Up, you mighty race, accomplish what you will." And so that speaks to Black pride, that speaks to self-reliance, that quote speaks to Pan-Africanism and Black nationalism. So that's who Marcus Garvey was. Any questions on Marcus Garvey?
There's no questions. Wait a minute. I believe the Communist supported it at one point. Yeah. So that was already responded to. James was just responding to Lucas. But I think it's also important to realize that Marcus Garvey is responsible for the development of the Pan-African flag. And the
red, the black, and the green.
Yes. So I want to show you guys what it looks like real quick.
He would have marches through Harlem.
I'm going to put a link for you guys.
Parades through Harlem.
Yeah, and the important thing about also like this flag is that at the time when this flag was created, a lot of the African countries were still being basically
colonized.
So when they got their freedom, many of them chose to use those colors for their own country's flags. So if you guys look up flags of Africa, you're going to see a lot of them have the red, green, black color scheme going on. So it's amazing that this man from Jamaica came to the U.S. and worked with a lot of the intellectuals in the U.S., developed this Pan-African flag, and then that flag ended up being used by African countries as the basis for the flags of their own countries, like Ghana.
Yep.
Yes. Ethiopian flag. Yes.
Independence. During their independence movements, when they created their own flag, and their independence movements were in the 1960s for the most part. This is during the civil rights movement also. And it's important that you also know that Malcolm X was inspired by Marcus Garvey, and Stokely Carmichael, who we learned about, was also inspired by Marcus Garvey. So you hear a lot of this same ideology, Black nationalism, Pan-Africanism, self-reliance, all of this constant message for African Americans.
Yeah.
So now, any more questions about Marcus Garvey before we move on?
No, just a comment by James about Middle Eastern flags being based on the same original flag.
Middle Eastern, same, but not the.
No, right, yeah.
Okay. All right. James. Booker T. Washington. Let me know if you heard of Booker T. Washington.
I forgot to put him up on the board. Marcus Garvey under Black nationalism. Okay. All right, you're good.
Okay. Can they see the screen? Can you see it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. So let me know in the chat box. Have you heard of Booker T. Washington?
Rose said yes. James says yep. Amir said yes. Yup. Samin says sí. Se puede. No, she didn't say. Okay. Devin said yes. Siani said yes. Colin said yerp. Rose said there was a school where I used to live named after him. Yes. Miranda, yeah, didn't we do a project on him? Tiffany said, hey. Lydia said yes, and King said yeah. So
super. So all right, so a little more on Booker T. Washington. I'm glad you guys have heard of Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington, there's a common theme during this time period, and that common theme is education. If you didn't put that together from that warm-up we just did and from the other leaders and intellectuals that you learned about so far, education, most people saw education as key to Black self-reliance. And that's Booker T. Washington, in addition to the others that we learned about. So Booker T. Washington was born enslaved in Virginia in 1856. His mother is Black, his father is white. They moved to West Virginia after emancipation. He was self-taught. His mother, he wanted really badly to learn to read and write. His mother saved up to buy him like a writing book or a coloring book, something to teach him. And so he mainly taught himself. He did have some schooling at night, but this is his, this upbringing is what is, at root, at the base of his ideology behind self-reliance. He entered Hampton Institute at 16. Hampton Institute, as some of you may know, is a HBCU, now known as Hampton University. So Booker T. Washington entered Hampton Institute at the age of 16. He graduates, he became a teacher himself. Later on, he opened Tuskegee Institute, and that was in 1881. And so throughout his life, Washington felt that one way he could help Black people succeed was by teaching them. And that's why he accepted the chance to open the Tuskegee Institute in 1881. When he arrived at Tuskegee, which is in Alabama, he saw that the school was nothing more than a rundown old plantation and a barn. He had to borrow money from friends or a friend to open the place. It didn't matter. You know, he had 30 students, and those 30 students cleared land, cut timber, and over the next 15 years, they built the school facilities themselves with their own hands. By the time of his death in 1915, the school had 66 buildings, 2,300 acres of land, and it's all under student cultivation. And so, you know, again, this is what he believed. He believed that Black people should learn a trade and work with their hands. And this whole idea of vo-tech and technical school was made popular by Booker T. Washington. So the Tuskegee Institute is what it was called. It's still around today. It's an HBCU, still in Tuskegee, Alabama. And it was founded to train teachers and to teach poor Black traders so that they can learn to succeed. And the school was very successful. Eventually, it changed from vo-tech to more traditional college. So today it offers more of a traditional college curriculum in addition to those trades, and offers many college degrees. So the school is still around. It's Tuskegee University, and students still attend it today.
They might have also heard of it because of the Tuskegee Experiment, which I'm not sure if you guys heard about that. But it was like an experiment that began in like the 1930s, where they took, basically in conjunction with the public health services for the United States government, they went and wanted to document the effects of syphilis, which is a sexually transmitted disease, on people, and in particular Black men. And so they began to follow them, and then what ends up happening is, and this is like, you know, historically everyone's always like, oh, they injected them with syphilis. They did not inject them with syphilis. Isn't that why Black people ask for Black doctors? A lot of Black people are like that as a result of that.
Yeah.
And many other things. But they didn't inject them with syphilis. They already had it. They studied them, but the egregiousness came in that once they found a cure or treatment for syphilis, which was penicillin, they did not give it to them. They just kept studying them and letting them just die and get really sick, and they did not give them the penicillin. So this was like a huge, huge controversy.
And this is during the Great Depression, right? In the 1930s. Yeah. Yep. All right. So so Booker T. Washington advocated for Black people to stay in the South as opposed to go north with the Great Migration. So tens of thousands of African Americans were going north of the Great Migration, but he advocated for African Americans to stay in the South and to help rebuild the South. He saw it as a great opportunity. So after the Civil War, the South is still, even during this time period, this is close to 30 years after the Civil War, and the South still needs rebuilding. So he urged that Black people stay in the South, rebuild the South after the Civil War, work alongside their former masters and other whites. He saw it as an opportunity for Black people to gain equal economic footing. He saw this equally as an opportunity for Black people to gain respect, and he believed that it would eventually lead to economic and, staying in the South would eventually lead to equal civil rights as white people would gain respect for Black workers and start to realize the value of Black workers. He positioned himself as somewhat of a mediator between white Southerners and Black Southerners. In 1901, he was even the advisor on Negro affairs for Teddy Roosevelt. And Teddy Roosevelt invited him to the White House, and that was a big to-do, obviously, because we're talking about Jim Crow and, you know, segregation, and this white president, Teddy Roosevelt, brings this Black. Oh, he wasn't the first Black man into the White House, though. You know, Lincoln invited Frederick Douglass into the White House as an advisor, as well. And was Ida B. Wells in the White House also?
Yes, she was, with her baby.
Yeah, I thought so.
Her, like, 3-month-old, 6-month-old baby. She
Mhm.
met, yes, she did. She met the president with her baby in tow. She had just had a baby a few months ago.
Yeah, so this was always a big deal.
Yeah, I'm
Black
feeling
people,
all that. Sis said, I'm gonna have this baby and get back to work.
of course, as we do. Um, all right, so yeah, he positioned himself as somewhat of a mediator. He advised the president on Negro affairs, which not all Black people were very, in support of because of his message, and which we'll talk about in a minute. That he expressed, this message that he expressed at the Cotton States and Exposition in Atlanta. And so in 1895, he made this famous speech at the Cotton States and International Exposition in Atlanta. This speech came to be known as the Atlanta Compromise. I already talked about how he saw education as a key to Black self-reliance, but that's what this quote is going to show you. On the next slide, I'll get to that quote. And he wrote his famous autobiography, Up From Slavery, in 1901 as well. And so that book, Up From Slavery, is widely circulated and purchased and becomes also a staple in African American studies later on in the 20th century. So let's go to the next slide. Booker T. Washington. So here's an excerpt from his 1895 speech at the Cotton States and International Exposition in Atlanta. This speech became known as the Atlanta Compromise. And the question is, after reading it, what is the compromise Washington is suggesting? Do you believe this to be a worthy compromise during this time? Is there anyone who wants to read the excerpt?
Don't all volunteer at once, folks. Come on. Oh, Rose, we got a hand.
Go, Rose.
Go, Rose.
Okay, starting at the quote.
Yes.
In all things that are purely social, we can be as separate as the fingers, yet one as the hand in all things essential to the mutual progress. The wisest among my race understand that the agitation of the questions of social equity is the extremist folly, and that the progress in the enjoyment of all the privileges that will come to us must be the result of severe and constant struggle, rather than of artificial forcing. No race that has anything to contribute to the markets of the world is long in any degree ostracized. It is important and right that all privileges of the law be ours, but it is vastly more important that we be prepared for the exercise of these privileges. The opportunity to earn $1 in a factory just now is worth infinitely more than the opportunity to spend $1 in an opera house.
Controversial. Very controversial.
Do you guys know why it's so controversial? Does anybody want to tell us why? What's so controversial about this? James has a hand.
Go, James.
Well, I guess it's controversial because the general wisdom around civil rights related things is that social agitation is the best way to do it, like try to disrupt society to the point where it has to acquiesce to your demands. So what Washington is saying here is that you should instead, I guess, earn the equality. Not that you need to earn it, but like in the minds of other people, earn it through contributions to society. So that's sort of the opposite route.
It certainly is the opposite route. Thank you, James. Good job. Thanks, Rose, for reading. In the first part, in all things purely social, we can be as separate as the fingers, yet as the hand in all things essential to mutual progress. And so there he's in a way advocating for or allowing or compromising social equity. He's saying it's okay for Jim Crow to exist. Separate but equal is okay, as long as we're able to work together for mutual progress. And that mutual progress is purely economic. It's not social or political. Do you guys understand that? Have any questions on that so far?
Any questions?
And then he goes on to say, the wisest among my race understand that the agitation of questions of social equity is to extremist folly. What is a folly? Can you type it into the chat box?
What's the folly, guys? Somebody said mistake. I believe a downfall.
Yeah.
Mistake.
Exactly. It's like a silly mistake too. It's like a blunder. It's like a oopsie. So the wisest among my race. So all the smarter people, all the smarter Black people know that trying to fight for social equality is a mistake. And that progress and the enjoyment of all the privileges that will come to us must be the result of severe and constant struggle rather than of artificial forcing. So let's not fight for equal rights and privileges. We have to struggle from that. You know, we just got out of slavery. We're at the bottom of society. We have to earn these things. We have to work for these things and struggle for them. We can't just force people to see us as equal. This is very, you know, controversial during this time period when you know, this is after the passing of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. And you know, what he's saying here, it goes against these rights. He's calling rights privileges.
Yeah.
These are rights. These things are written into the Constitution, written in with our blood.
Would you say this is also like, because I also think Du Bois plays a role in this too, but like respectability politics. I feel like this is like the birth.
They both. So Du Bois has his own spin on respectability politics with elitism. I'm sorry?
I'll put that in the chat too, so in case the kids want to look it up.
Respectability politics, yeah. Respectability politics, we can say what it is really quickly. The idea is that if you're dressed a certain way, if you speak a certain way, if you carry yourself a certain way, if you make a certain amount of money in this case.
Don't use AAVE.
Say it again.
Don't use AAVE.
AAVE.
Ebonics, African American Vernacular English.
Oh, Ebonics, yeah.
Yeah. You know, they got the new
Yeah, but you know, I don't subscribe to respectability politics.
Mm-hmm.
Period. You know, so people are going to respect you if they do, or they don't, you know, and there's no way that I can dress, no way that I can speak, no way, you know, that's going to make anyone respect me anymore. I mean, that's what I believe, you know, and that you need, everyone needs to be able to be themselves and have the right to be themselves and still be respected.
Absolutely.
So let me see. And that the progress of in the enjoyment of all the privileges that will come to us must be the result of severe and constant struggle rather than of artificial forcing. So you can't make people like you. You have to earn that. He says, no race that has anything to contribute to the markets of the world is long in any degree ostracized. So if you work and you have something to contribute, something that you've built, something that you can sell, some type of product, you won't be left out because other people in the world will respect you for it because they'll want it as well. So you won't be ostracized, which means to be left out or looked at as an outsider.
Right.
It is important and right that all privileges of the law be ours, but it is vastly more important that we be prepared for the exercise of those privileges. So again, this idea that you have to start from the bottom and kind of work yourself your way up, you know, become educated, learn a trade, get that respect so that, you know, you're ready to exercise the privilege. He's talking about the right to vote even, you know. The opportunity to earn $1 in a factory just now is worth infinitely more than the opportunity to spend $1 in an opera house. And so this whole spending $1 in an opera house, you know, that speaks to the end of Jim Crow, the end of segregation, that speaks to equal social standing in American society. And he's saying that these things are not important, that those things we can compromise, we can wait on those things. Right now, what we need to do is to focus on making money. So he he said that by learning a trade, African Americans would hold the key to their own civil rights at this time, especially at this time when we're fresh out of slavery. It's 1895, so 30 years after slavery. And so the question is, and I'm going to end with this because it's 1:58, and then we'll get to Du Bois tomorrow. And you guys can answer this in the chat box, but what is the compromise Washington is suggesting? And do you believe this to be a worthy compromise during this time? And I also just want to add, while you guys are thinking, he advocated for self-help, right? To pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. You don't need white people to give you your rights. Just make your money and they can employ you. But more than that, you should, start your own businesses and learn a trade to do that, and just be reliant on yourself, and everything else will fall into place. And so the question is, what is the compromise he's suggesting? And do you believe this to be a worthy compromise during this time period?
Liddy says yes. Self-management and self-control. Colin says, if Black people want power and respect, they should climb to the capitalist social ladder. Okay. But does that matter? Or no? I mean, yeah, I'm just thinking, Colin. Certainly people do have that view. And then there are people who have the opposite view, which is that even that doesn't matter. Can we get any more responses before you guys roll out?
Are people rolling out?
I know rolling out.
Yeah. So, Booker T. Washington.
Do you mind if I share the screen so I can show the Pan-African flag real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Let me see.
So Booker T. Washington thought that poor Blacks work together with whites in order to win equality and tolerance.
Oh, you're presenting.
And I need to end it?
Oh, no, I can do it.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm done. I was just saying that.
So that's the Pan-African flag for those of you who are unaware of what it looks like. I've had a couple of them hanging up in my room. And this flag is the basis for a lot of flags that are now used in Africa. So that's the definition of Pan-Africanism, where something that was developed by a Black Jamaican man in the United States ends up being used in Africa. Isn't yellow more common than black? Let me show you guys. There is a lot of yellow, but let me show you this next tab, and I'm gonna just scroll down. As you can see, red, green, and black are common in a lot of the flags. So as I'm scrolling up, South Africa has it, Sao Tome, Malawi, Libya, Kenya, Guinea-Bissau, Ghana. Ghana was actually the first to adopt this flag. So yeah, yellow is there a lot, but that red and that green and black is also in a lot of the flags. So